think it's fair to say that if you're a beginner in any craft or skill and you need some advice, the best thing to do is to ask an expert. But what if you're like me? 9 months ago, when I wanted to make my first longbow, I knew no one and I knew nothing. So for those of you out there that would like to make a longbow but have no idea where to start, this is my beginner's guide to being a beginner. All you experienced archers and bowyers, please do look away now, because this is the first bow I ever made. So I think the first piece of advice for any of you out there that wants to make a longbow is have a go. This is my first longbow. It's truly awful, but it still works. It's made from ash. I cut the tree one day and made the bow the next. People said it would break, it would smash, it would fly open in my hands, but it didn't. Here it is 9 months later and it still works. This ash bow, it's 66 inches long. The bark is still on the back. The belly is rather flat. It's not rounded like a traditional longbow. The draw weight is about 30 pounds at 28 inches. And it flings an arrow a rather nice distance. The string is just paracord. The nocks are protected by the tips of an old glove. The handle is the same, it's part of an old glove stitched with wax thread, and this rather unusual colour is because I had nothing else with which to treat the bow against water ingress, so I rubbed in shoe polish. Ash is a very common wood throughout the UK and Northern Europe. It's easy to find. This was a sapling that was about 3 inches in diameter and 8 foot long when I cut it down. If you want to see me making this bow, there is a video of the entire build. Have a look up there, that's a clip being played now, and in the description below is a link to that video on my YouTube channel. Now I know this is oversimplifying things, but the making of a longbow can broadly be divided into 2 stages. The first one, and often a problem for a novice like me, and perhaps like you too, is to find a stave of wood. And secondly, tillering the bow, that is, making that lovely bend. Each stage is a problem for a novice. Firstly, where do you get a stave from? And secondly, how on earth do you make that lovely bend? Of course, another problem is waiting for the wood to dry, to season. It takes an awful long time. A piece of yew might need to season for 3 to 4 years. A piece of ash could well do with a year's seasoning, and some trees more, some trees less. If you use hazel, perhaps you can speed it up and do it within 6 months. But basically, if you're a beginner, it creates an awful lot of impatience, waiting for your piece of wood to season. Unless you buy it already seasoned, it's a great problem. How do you solve that? Well, I did it this way. This is the second bow that I built, or rather finished. What I did, I bought a tri-laminate longbow stave from eBay. Again, if you look up there, there's a little clip playing of me making the bows. 2 videos on my YouTube channel, and you can watch me make this bow. It draws 40 pound at 28 inches, and it taught me a lot. So, tip number 2 for you beginners out there is do what I did. Get yourself a longbow stave like this. Triple laminate, 77 inches long, already fitted with horn nocks, supplied with a string and a piece of leather to make a handle with. Link below in the description to tell you where to get these things from. I learned a great deal from this, but I didn't have to worry about seasoning wood or waiting for it to be ready. I just started the tillering process, and it's a great way to learn. Just concentrate on that really difficult bit of bow making. Have a go at one of these. Now this bow is a really sweet little bow. It's a great thing to use out in the fields to learn the techniques of drawing a lightweight bow. So, what did I learn in completing this tri-laminate longbow? Working on a pre-made stave is so much easier for a beginner. You concentrate on one thing only, and that is completing the bow and getting a nice shape. But at the same time, I learned some other skills as well. I made my first Flemish twist bowstring. I also improvised an arrow pass out of half a button, as you can see here. That was really useful experience. So that was bow number 2. But for a moment, let's pause and talk tools. Now it's surprising how few tools you need to make or to finish a longbow. These are the tools that I use. Okay, if you're making a self bow, that is a bow from one piece of wood, you need something to cut the wood with. And I use this, a Gerber machete. Must be sharp, but it's really handy for making the initial shape from your raw stave. Now for my first bow, I use one of these, a draw knife. Great for taking bark off, working the stave down. They're quite inexpensive on eBay, maybe £20, £30. You can find them on flea markets, weekend stalls, car boot sales. They're really handy, but they're not essential. But if you can get one, do so. Since making the ash bow, I've also added a spoke shave. Really quite inexpensive on eBay. This one was about £5. Now a wood rasp is really useful as well. This one has a fine side here and a coarser, sharper side there. These are really great for roughing out your stave. Now when you're finishing your bow, you need to smooth the wood down, and these things are perfect for that. They're called cabinet scrapers, available in a set of 5 on eBay for about £5 or £6. They're almost essential and they're simple to use. And for final finishing and smoothing, get some sandpaper, similar to this. Now I've recently bought one of these also. It's called a block plane, quite inexpensive. Really useful though for working on your stave. Though not essential, one of these things is really handy. It's called a vernier gauge. But good old-fashioned ruler would do just as well. Again, not essential, but one of these things is really useful. It's called a tile saw and is excellent for making the grooves in the horn nocks at the end of the bow. Now when you start tillering your bow, that is bending the bow to get the correct shape, you'll need something called a tillering stick. I made this one out of some scrap timber I found in the shed. Now if you're keen to know the draw weight of your bow, you'll need something like this. This is an inexpensive spring balance and it's what I used to start with. Since then I've upgraded to one of these. Also quite inexpensive, but allows me to measure heavier draw weight bows. So those are some of the tools and aids I use when I'm making a longbow. Now I wonder if, like me, you are intrigued by the word warbow. You see, if there was anything disappointing about my second bow, it was the draw weight. Now a £40 draw weight longbow is in fact quite powerful, but that word warbow intrigued me. So for bow number 3, I wanted to make something that was a heavier draw weight, and my target was £80 and around about 28 inches. And this is what I did. This is my third bow, a tri-laminate made in the same way as bow number 2, but this one draws £86 at 29 inch. When I built this, I had no idea just how hard a heavyweight bow would be to build. And it wasn't just the building of this heavier bow that was a challenge to me, it was using it as well. This bow opened up a completely new world. This then is my third bow, made once again from a pre-bought stave fitted with horn nocks, ready to go. All I had to do was tiller it. When I say all I had to do, tillering a heavy bow I found out is much harder than the lighter bows I had experience of beforehand. I learned a great deal on this bow, and I would recommend, if you want to get into heavier weight bows, work your way up through the weights when you're making them and using them. It's a revelation as the draw weights get higher, and it tests you more and more and more each bow you make. So this bow took me about 10 hours from receiving the pre-shaped stave to completing tillering and coating it with varnish. It took me many hours longer though to learn how to draw it. I'd never drawn such a heavyweight bow before, and it was really, for me, quite a challenge. Tip number 3, and that is work on these laminated staves. Practice with them. They're inexpensive, they're easy to obtain, and they give you results quickly without waiting for wood to season, or indeed even finding the wood in the first place. But if you, like me, are really fascinated by war bows and self bows, there is only one way to go next, and bow number 4 was this. This delightfully wonky piece of stick is my first ever yew bow. It draws 40 pound at 31 inches. It is really quite a lightweight bow, but it was made just from a branch of yew found locally. Now this simple little yew bow has no refinements at all, no horn knocks, just grooves at the end of the wood. There's no handle. It's full of character, knots, bumps, waves, all sorts of strange things. What a great adventure it was making this little bow. Now it took me about 15 hours to make this yew longbow, way longer than necessary, but I took my time, and that's always wise if you're making a self bow. Go slowly, go carefully, and you will get there. I seasoned the wood for just 6 months, but shortly after getting it in the green, I trimmed it down to the approximate size I wanted. This allowed the wood to season much more quickly, and I put it indoors to help it along. I knew I would never ever get a high draw weight from this bow, but it doesn't matter. Tip number 4, go out, get some wood, make a self bow. Don't worry about the draw weight. Make sure though that you get a good tiller. It's great practice and you'll love it. I think this bow is fantastic. It's probably my favourite. So if you want to make a self bow, where do you find the stave? Always a problem, but not insurmountable. Firstly, look on eBay. It's surprising what's there. Just search for longbow stave. Secondly, cultivate friendships with tree surgeons. Every single day they're cutting down branches, taking down trees, and you never know what they might have. They're experts. Go and ask one. They might find you something that's surprisingly good. If you go into the fields and woods though to find something yourself, seek the owner's permission. So if you'd like to have a go at making a self bow, but you can't get any yew, what do? Well, don't give up. Why not try Hazel? This is a Hazel bow, and it draws well over 80 pound at 29 inches. This Hazel bow is 77 inches long. I've fitted yew knock strengtheners. The bark is still on, and I toasted the belly with a heat gun to give it some extra strength. Now each type of bow wood has different properties. This was my first Hazel bow, and I made some mistakes. I made the belly a little bit too round. Consequently, I now have some compression fractures along the belly, but the bow still works and it still draws almost 90 pound at 29 inches. This bow took me about 18 hours to make. The stave was seasoned for about 5 months, then worked down to the size I wanted, allowed to season a little bit longer, and then I started shaping the bow and eventually tillering it. And if you want to see me using this bow for the very first time, have a look at the clip above there, which is a short extract from a video I made which is now on my YouTube channel. A link is below in the description. So what did I learn in making this Hazel longbow? Firstly, the revelation that there is wood everywhere in our hedgerows and woodlands from which you can make a decent bow, and it's called Hazel. If you're a beginner, I do recommend you get a stave of Hazel and have a try at making a bow. I also discovered that as the draw weight increases, so do the challenges faced by the beginner bowyer. Far better then to practice on something like Hazel than spoil a really good piece of yew. So tip number 5 is this: if you're making a self bow in medium to high draw weight, don't dismiss the native woods of the UK like wych elm, ash and hazel. They make fantastic bows. They're so-called mean woods, and never dismiss them, because the medieval archers that made the longbow so famous would have learned their trade on just such meanwood bows. So that was my 5th bow, a Hazel self bow with a draw weight in excess of 85 pounds. Now I thought that would be a brilliant apprenticeship for my next project. Bow number 6. How wrong I was, how much more I had to learn when I built this, a 100 pound yew warbow. Now if you'd like to see me building this bow, there are 5 videos on my YouTube channel following my progress from log to finished bow. There's a clip playing in the corner now, and in the description below there's a link to the video playlist. it took me well over 20 hours to build this Warbow. I learned a great deal and now realise I have much more to learn, but I include it here for one reason and one reason only, and that is to prove that a beginner can make a reasonable go at building a longbow or a warbow with limited experience. So tip number 6 is the same as tip number 1. Have a go. Well, that's just about the end of this beginner's guide about how to be a beginner. There are of course many other ways to learn the skill of making bows. You can look on the internet for courses, and there you will get an ash or a U shaft, and under expert guidance you will be shown how to build your own longbow, and at the end of it you'll take home your own bow. Of course there are many clubs and societies. There are links below in the description guiding you to them, and these people will give you fantastic help and advice if you wish to join them. If like me though you're happy with self-learning and the joys of discovering new skills, then I hope the preceding tips have given you some encouragement to make your own bow. So again, thanks for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. Now go get some wood and make a longbow.